Hey everyone, this is Knight bringing you another standard match. This time from our local tournament this past weekend. On the left, we do have Alexis piloting the crossover dress deck, Nirvana Jiva, and on the right, we actually have Victoria playing Gramgrace. So another new deck from BT8, which if you've been playing Deer Days, you have had for quite a bit. But with its release in BT8, it now becomes playable in the actual meta. So getting into the match, we are going to be seeing just the ride up. Actually going to be playing the Marin as the grade 1 for Gramgrace, because if you don't know, Gramgrace actually does not have its own ride line, which means that if you're going to playing it, you do have to choose which ride line you want to go with. So I think that actually playing the whole blaster ride line is probably your best bet whenever if you want to play Gramgrace, just because it's honestly just like the best generic Keter ride line at the moment. Both like Hexa Orb and Bastion are like very specific with what they do. But as we can see here, getting into Alexis's grade 2 turn, he's going to be calling that Trickstar behind the Reno and actually calling out a Galantite. Just swinging, it's going to be guarded with that grade 2, swinging the Vanguard, no triggers on both sides. So going back to Toria's turn, looks like we're going to be discarding that grade 2, which is another new card from BT8, and riding into the Blaster Dark. So you might be wondering why Alexis kind of called a Galantite if this Blaster Dark is going to be coming out, because as we see, the Marin's skill is going to proc, check top 5 for a grade 2 Blaster. Probably not playing it in the main deck, which means you do get to be calling out your starter, that Wingull Brave from the Soul. And now that you have a rear guard, you can actually activate Blaster Dark's effect to counterblast 1 and retire 1 and give it a drive. So as I was saying, you might be wondering why Alexis is calling that grade 2 when he could know that Blaster Dark is incoming. The reason is just because most people now are playing Blaster Dark with the Marin package, just because I think it is just honestly a little bit better than the regular Blaster Javelin one. But when you're playing against Victoria, you really don't know what to expect. So honestly, not the worst misplay. I mean, you do go -1, but at the same time, like, this is Jiva, you can always just revive that card. But still, anyways, getting into this Nirvana turn, Alexis' turn, we do see the Galantite coming back, just like I mentioned, as well as the Trickstar. So we've got 2 full columns, and looks like we're actually just going to be swinging and passing, not even going for any crossover dress. Going to swing that Nirvana, actually getting a heal off the first drive check, giving the power to Galantite, and getting a second check, which is going to be a draw trigger, giving the power also to Galantite. So this Galantite's going to be swinging for 15, 25, 35 at the Vanguard, which is a really nice number, so we're probably just going to be taking it. And there we can finally see the Persona Ride hitting the damage, the Gramgrace. So it is finally revealed what Victoria is playing today, as we are going to see as she just rides into that Gramgrace. So now going to be starting off with that Gramgrace's skill, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, drawing 1 card, and then you can call 1 thing from your hand to back row center, I believe only, and then it gets an extra 10k, and it can also attack from the back row. So we are getting the most ideal target you really want to be calling off Gramgrace, which is going to be that Fasado, which means it's going to be hitting for a nice 23, and with that on hit pressure. Calling out that grade 2, which I have learned new information. That card is actually called Carebree. That's the name of that card, which I have just been neglecting this entire time. Anyways, calling it off, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, checking top 3, and if you caught it earlier, you can see that her choices are PG, or a trigger. And of course, we are going to have to call that PG, because if you watch my last video, you know that Carebree is not optional. You have to call something, even if it is a 6k PG. As we see, just honestly some of the downsides of that card. Not sure how I feel about it. I think it's pretty decent, but honestly, sometimes you do whiff really hard. Actually be calling out that new card, the grade 2 we saw earlier. Its name is Turnar. I'll go ahead and explain its effect a little bit later once it comes up. And we are actually calling that Leg the Shot, the grade 2. It will get boost if you have a grade 3 in Soul, which normally you'd be thinking, oh, how are you going to do that? But as we just saw, that Fasado with the Gramgrace's skill after it attacks, it does actually put itself into soul, meaning that Logdus shot is actually very much live. Swinging the Gramgrace, going to be no guarded, hitting double blanks onto that. And then just swing with this other column with a turn R, that is going to be 25. And at this very moment, turn R's skill activates, since it was boosted by that grade 2, which got boosted because you have a grade 3 in soul, and you have 3 face down damage. You can actually put it into the soul and countercharge. Just honestly a really good generic card that we got in BTA. I wouldn't be surprised if that card ends up seeing play somewhere in the future. Right now it really doesn't have a good home, other than Gramgrace, I suppose, but honestly pretty good generic. It's gonna be swinging that Carberry, I believe, at the Gallandite, because if you swing it at the Vanguard, that's just a 5k guard, which, I mean, they could intercept anyway. But by swinging at the Gallandite, you do kind of force them to hit at least 10k shield, which we did see with that draw trigger guard. So let's actually get back into the match. So we have Nirvana Jiva using the skill, calling out, what's that card called? The Urbargo, as well as another Trickstar, full Trickstar back row. Going to be cross overdressing into the Vils Verena, adding back the Boru that we discarded for Nirvana Jiva skill, and then cross overdressing into that bar. You're going to be using that Unbargo skill to counterblast 1, soul charge 1, and retire one of the opponent's rear guards. And then it looks like we're going to be using that bar skill twice, soul blasting 2 for each, total of 4 cards to retire 1 rear guard. So now that Bauer is alive to get those drive checks. So it looks like we're going to be swinging that Vils Verena for, I believe, just 15, because it only gets an extra 5k when it is cross overdressed. And it looks like we are just going to be taking that and actually hitting a heal trigger, which is very nice. Something you definitely would like to see for this at this moment. Going to be swinging that Nirvana Jiva, and restanding the Vils Verena, which is an interesting play, because sitting it doesn't really hit. I guess we're just banking on triggers. And my mistake, the Vils Verena is actually at 20 because the Gallandite was its original dress. So we're going to be checking, getting a draw trigger, which is pretty nice. Probably going to be putting the power on the Vils so they can actually hit, so it goes up to 30, which is going to be hitting over that defensive. Just drawing our card. Second check, it is going to be, I believe that was another Vils Verena. Swinging the Vils Verena again for a nice 30, so that's going to be calling for a 10k shield. The other Bauer, I believe, is at 23 thanks to its own skill. I believe it gives itself 10k. Honestly, a lot of the crossover dress units just like randomly get an extra 10k for no reason. Looks like that's going to be hit with a nice 15-point guard. And then we're going to be swinging the Bauer Verena using its skill to counterblast 1, give itself -1 drive, and perform drive checks. Going to be drive checking, actually hitting a heal, which is going to be going off. So honestly, in a really good position for the Nirvana Jiva player. The only issue we have right now is that we have no CB, but hopefully we can take some damage this next turn. Anyways, we are going to be seeing the Chalice, the Regalius piece, being played in order to activate Persona Ride. And we are going to be seeing Gramgrace's last skill, which is very cool, which actually, if you Persona Ride, the Persona Ride power goes to both your back row and your front row. So it looks like we are just using the Gramgrace's skill, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, calling one thing from hand and giving it the ability to attack from the back row. But as you can see here with the hesitation, we're seeing kind of one of the main weaknesses of Gramgrace, which is that you're relying a lot on your draws in order to give you good rear guards. I mean, as you can see here, there is 10k to the front row, 10k to the back row, but thanks to that Verena, you have 0 rear guards. As we're going to see, the Painkiller Angel is actually going to be the call target off the Gramgrace's skill, and all we're going to be doing is calling out that Divine Sister. So thanks to the Verena, I mean, even if it didn't go off, well, if it did go off, you would have 3 extra rears, and this attack would be hitting for much nicer numbers. But as we can see, Gramgrace is really struggling to call a board out. Even though we have a ton of cards in hand, A lot of them are triggers at this moment, so honestly, just if we're going to be attacking with the current board that we have right now, that is just honestly, you're just wasting so much power with that. But honestly, it can't be held. I mean, what are you going to do? Call down triggers? You could, but honestly, you're just losing so much shield value if you're calling like 3 triggers just to like hit, and they're barely hitting because they're only like 15 or 14. Honestly, probably not worth it in this case. But this Painkiller Angel is actually hitting for 28, which is a pretty nice number. And it is actually going to be swinging at the Burrow of Arena, which is kind of what you have to do in this situation, because you are in a really bad situation at the moment, being the Gramgrace. Looks like we're going to be swinging the Vanguard actually at the Veals Arena, trying to do some cleanup. Probably just gonna play for that damage denial, because if the crossover dress does not have any CB, it really doesn't do that much. I mean, there's a couple of things you can do, but you definitely need the CB for the more impactful things. Looks like the Nirvana to get the restand, you need 1 CB. If you want to be using the Burrow skill, that's going to be another CB. So it looks like we are actually going to be swinging that Divine Sister, just giving the opportunity to actually get a damage. If you're Verena right now, Nirvana, I think you just take the damage. It is just a 25, which is either a 15-point guard, but you really do need at least 1 CB. Considering we just did swing into the rears, I think we just take that because we need 1 CB in order to do those 4 attacks. So it looks like we're going to be starting off with a very nice Persona Ride. So we do only have the 1 CB, as I said, so we do have to figure out what we want to do. There are quite a few options that you can do without any CB, but not going to be quite as strong as some of the other plays that you could be doing. Using that Jiva skill, calling out the Trickstar, as well as the Gallandite back out. Looks like we're going to be crossover dressing into another Veals Arena, adding back the, oh god, what's that one? The Garrow? Yes, the Garrow. And actually just calling it out as a rear guard, not crossover dressing it. Maybe it doesn't have a Prayer Dragon or doesn't want to commit all those cards. Because when you are playing crossovers, you are committing a lot of cards. It's basically you're committing 3 cards in order to just like make 1 unit. So it's, I personally don't like the crossover dress deck too much, just because I think it minuses a lot, but it does definitely have some powerful plays, as we're seeing here. The Veals Arena swinging for a nice 30 with the Persona Ride, and the Gallandite, that is its original dress, swinging the Vanguard, restanding it. Looks like it's just gonna get PG'd, drive checking 2 blanks, just swinging the Garou for 20 thanks to the Persona Ride. Doesn't get any extra power because it is not crossover dress, and swinging the Veals again for another 30. Looks like it's just gonna be hit with that front trigger for a 33. So going into Gramgrace, starting off with a Persona Ride, which is really nice, especially since you are getting that extra 10k to the back row. But unfortunately, as we can see again, that extra 10k to the back row isn't going to matter if you can't call out a full board. Soul Blasting that Painkiller Angel, because obviously you want to keep the grade 3 in Soul. Actually getting a Fasado off the top, which is really nice, because that Fasado is now going to be hitting for a very good 33 at the Vanguard with that on hit, which your opponent is probably going to block. Calling out another Turnar. And unfortunately, it looks like that might be the extent, because if we can take a look at the hand, it is mostly triggers and perfect guards, which are not cards you want to be calling out. But we are going to be swinging with that Fasado first for a 33, going to be guarded with 5-point guard, so 38. Putting the Fasado into Soul, drawing a card, and then looks like we are swinging with the Vanguard next. Looks like that's going to be met with a perfect guard, not taking any risks. Although, honestly, you could probably afford to take this damage. We're going to see 2 blanks. Yeah, so definitely taking that damage might have been a little bit of a better play, because that is kind of a guaranteed. The only way you lose is if your opponent hits a double critical trigger, because you are at 3. So even if they hit 1 trigger, you probably would have been happy for that, because like you have 2 open CB and then you can just guard these other ones. But with this position you're in right now, you do have those 2 rears and they do have 2 more attacks, so it's pretty likely that they would just swing at rears and pass, basically just damage denying you again. As we do see here, the Turnar swinging at the Vilsvarina. I believe Vilsvarina is at a 15k base, and then the Divine Sister is going to be swinging at the other one. So once again, going into this turn, being damage denied. Starting off with another Persona Ride, which is very nice. Discarding a Trickstar to call out a Trickstar, as well as, I believe that is Gallandite again. So that is like the third time Gallandite has been revived. And he is definitely putting in quite a bit of work, as we're going to see here. Crossover dressing into, not the Vilsvarina, calling out a, what's that, a Brahmada. Obviously can't use a skill, just being adding that Gallandite back. And then crossover dressing with the Gallandite into the Barul, which means that this Gallandite, or this Gallandite is going to be giving Barul an extra 5k, meaning that this Barul is going to be swinging for 30k thanks to the Persona Ride. Looks like we're going to swing Vanguard first because obviously we can't restand. Hitting a guarding with the over trigger and hitting a, I think that was a heal. I think. Anyways, swinging with the, what's that? The Vils for 25, I believe. I could be wrong, but I believe we put... Sorry for missing all these things. I'm such a bad commentator. Anyways, swinging with the Vilsvarina, this is a 25, which is, I believe, a 15-point guard. But the Gallandite is going to be swinging for 40, I believe. Oh, so I guess we gave the power to the Vilsvarina because we did guard 43 there. So we're going to be guarding the Gallandite with... Why do I keep calling Gallandite? Because there's Gallandite underneath the Baru with a heal trigger as well as a front trigger. So that's going to be more than enough. So as we can see here, we do see that the Regalia order, 2 copies in Victoria's hand, which... I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, it is a good way to build board, but at the same time, you are kind of just like relying on what you get off the top. So like in this situation, drawing 2 cards seems really good because you have an empty back row. But at the same time, there's the chance that you can just like draw into garbage. And you are forced to call 2 things. Otherwise, you do have to discard them. And it looks like off the top, we are going to get a copy of Persona Ride and a heal trigger, which is... really not what you want, but you do have to call 2, otherwise you have to discard. I believe it's 2 cards or just like any card. But it looks like we're actually going to be calling out that heal trigger and the Cardfight, just to basically make sure we don't have to discard. Moving the Cardfight up, using Gramgrace's skill to counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, using our last counterblast to draw a card. Unfortunately, drawing into a heal trigger, which is not what you want to be seeing, because you are going to be seeing the Persona Ride coming out, because honestly, that's the best thing that we have in hand right now, and that's going to have to be our attacker. So we are going to be just swinging with the Gramgrace Rearguard. Unfortunately, we did not Persona Ride, so that is just going to be a 23. And the worst thing you could possibly imagine happens here, where we do hit a front trigger, meaning that it's impossible to swing at rears, it's impossible to swing at Vanguard. And honestly, this whole turn is just like going down the drain. So it looks like we are swinging with the Vanguard next, probably hoping to hit some triggers. Just because these other 2 attacks aren't really hitting. They're hitting for 25 and 15. So unless we get a trigger, only one of them has the potential to hit. And we can't even really swing at rears because they're at 30 and 25. So they can't even hit there. It looks like we are just going to be using the Turnar skill to put its own soul. Countercharge. Not that it matters a whole ton. At this point, Gramgrace has 4 cards left in deck. A couple cards in hand. Nirvana has 1 CB, which is honestly what you really need. All you really need to do good plays, especially with the fact that you already have the what's that card called? Oh my god, the Garu already out, which doesn't need CB and is already just like really good pressure. So it looks like we're starting off with that Garu, swinging at the Vanguard for a clean 20. Oh, that is going to be calling for 2 cards from hand. which can be anything. So we're going to be seeing the heal as well as the Fasado just guarded in order to get that swing with the Nirvana. Counterblasting 1 to race 10 the Garo. Going to be carding for 15, 28. That is 2 to pass. Looks like we're actually going to be hitting a critical trigger, giving the power to the Veilsarina and the critical to the Baru. Baru, oh my god. The Gower! These names are just so impossible. Swinging the Veilsarina for 25. Going to be guarded with a front trigger, 33. That's smart enough. And then the Garu is going to be finishing off with that double crit. So that was the end of the game. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to do all those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you then.